The small coastal town of Seabreeze was known for its picturesque beaches, charming cottages, and peaceful way of life. But one summer, everything changed. It was the season of storms, and the town was hit by a series of violent thunderstorms that left the residents on edge. Amidst the chaos, a mysterious death occurred, and the town was thrown into a whirlwind of fear and suspicion. It all began on a warm July evening. The sky was dark, and the air was thick with the promise of rain. The townsfolk had gathered at the local inn, seeking shelter from the impending storm. Among them was Eleanor Hart, a wealthy widow who had recently moved to Seabreeze. Eleanor was known for her sharp tongue and her love of gossip, which made her both admired and disliked by many. As the storm raged outside, the inn was filled with laughter and chatter. But as the night wore on, the mood grew tense. The storm had knocked out the power, and the inn was lit only by the flickering light of candles. It was then that Eleanor suddenly collapsed, clutching her chest. Before anyone could react, she was dead. The townsfolk were shocked. Eleanor had seemed perfectly healthy just moments before. The local doctor, Dr. Samuel Graves, examined her body and declared that she had died of a heart attack. But not everyone was convinced. There were whispers of foul play, and soon, the town was buzzing with rumors. Detective Arthur Lane, who had been vacationing in Seabreeze, was called in to investigate. Arthur was a tall, lean man with a sharp mind and a keen eye for detail. He had a reputation for solving the most perplexing cases, and the townsfolk were eager to see what he would uncover. Arthur began his investigation by interviewing the people who had been at the inn that night. He spoke to the innkeeper, a jovial man named Thomas, who had been serving drinks all evening. Thomas told Arthur that Eleanor had been in high spirits, laughing and chatting with everyone. He had served her a glass of wine, just like everyone else, and hadn't noticed anything unusual. Next, Arthur spoke to Eleanor's closest friend, Margaret, a quiet woman who had been sitting with her at the time of her death. Margaret was visibly shaken and could barely speak through her tears. She told Arthur that Eleanor had been her confidant and that she had no idea why anyone would want to harm her. As Arthur continued his investigation, he discovered that Eleanor had been involved in a bitter feud with a local businessman, Richard Blackwood. Richard had been trying to buy Eleanor's property, but she had refused to sell. Richard had been seen arguing with Eleanor earlier that day, and many believed that he had a motive for wanting her dead. Arthur decided to pay Richard a visit. Richard was a tall, imposing man with a cold demeanor. He denied any involvement in Eleanor's death and claimed that he had been at home during the storm. But Arthur wasn't convinced. He noticed that Richard's hands were trembling and there was a faint smell of alcohol on his breath. Arthur returned to the inn and examined the glass that Eleanor had been drinking from. He noticed a faint residue at the bottom of the glass and decided to have it analyzed. The results came back the next day. The residue was a rare poison that could cause a heart attack. With this new evidence, Arthur confronted Richard. At first, Richard denied everything, but under Arthur's relentless questioning, he finally broke down and confessed. He had poisoned Eleanor's drink in a fit of rage after she had refused to sell her property to him. He had hoped that her death would be blamed on the storm, but he hadn't counted on Arthur's sharp mind. Richard was arrested and charged with murder. The town of Seabreeze breathed a collective sigh of relief, but the memory of that stormy night would linger for years to come. As for Arthur, he packed his bags and left Seabreeze, ready for his next adventure. But he knew that he would always remember the summer storm that had brought death to the peaceful town by the sea.